Lawrence's stepmother, and under the care of this stepmother, Lawrence got ample opportunity to give vent to her creative sensibility. So, when she was a graduate student, she was able to publish a number of poems and short stories. Then, after graduation in English honors, she got married. And after her marriage, she went first to England for 1 year with her husband, who was an engineer. Then the couple went to Africa for 7 years. And these two travels and staying outside inculcated a number of values and plenty of experiences in the life of Margaret. Now, come let us know about the influential factors in Africa. That a span of 7 years was a long time in the life of a person to be dominated, to be influenced by that territory. So, when Lawrence arrived in South Africa, she was first influenced by the cultural variations of South Africa. So, whenever we travel from our homeland and settle in a foreign country, the first and foremost thing that influences us is the cultural aspect of that new nation. So this was true with Margaret too. The cultural diversities. Africa was a country of so many nations with so many tribes. Every tribe had its own cultural practice, and all the cultural practices came into Margaret as influential factors. So when we go outside and become influenced by the cultural homogeneities, one thing comes to our mind that we get a very specific perspective about our own culture. When we are outside, we become nostalgic to our own culture. We try to find out what are the good points in our culture, which are not in this new culture, and what are the better points in the new culture that are not found in our own culture. So in this way, a sense of comparison between two cultures comes to our mind, and Margaret passed through that comparison. And accordingly, she got a definite perspective to write about her own Canadian culture. The most influential factor in South Africa was the influence of Somaliland, which is now known as Somali. Because her husband, as an engineer, spent 2 or 3 years in Somali, and when Margaret was in Somali, she was influenced by the oral literature of Somaliland people. And at the time, as South Africa was a poor nation, separated from the mainstream, the only thing left with this writer was to read the local literature of tribal people. And Somalian tribals had their own oral tradition of literature, and Margaret got an opportunity to translate those oral aspects of literature into English, and from the very preliminary stage, she earned a reputation by the publishers in England. This is the short note on her biography. Now come to the thematic concerns in the literary work of this writer, Margaret Lawrence. What are the thematic aspects? What are the themes on which she writes? The first important theme of Margaret Lawrence is the middle class sentiment. As a man, as a woman of politics, Margaret shows her affiliation towards leftist Marxism. So, as a Marxist, she is concerned with love for social and political justice of people as a whole. But Margaret Lawrence goes beyond the boundary of socio-political justice. She develops a humanitarian sentiment towards the predicament of the common people, ordinary people, especially the poor agricultural people of Canada. So, in her novels, we shall find a genuine touch of humanitarianism towards the problem of poor people. Second theme of Margaret Lawrence is her deliberate view on fate. Margaret Lawrence was a fatalist, a person, a lady who believes in the play of fate in the life of man. That according to the writer, or if we analyze the novels of Margaret Lawrence, we shall find that faith plays a very vital role in giving a shape to the ways of men in the society. That is, many people of nowadays reject the influence of faith, but Margaret is of different temperament. She says no, faith has a great role, and in her novels we shall find that her characters pass through the ordeal of faith. But though she was a fatalist, she was also a pragmatist, a lady who believes strongly in the fact that fate is not the sole cause for the situation of man. Man builds his or her own fate. So there is human error because of which man suffers. No doubt fate has a great role in the suffering of man, but human error has also a great role. So fate as a theme in her novel. Third important aspect of the theme of her novels is development of Canada. So the developmental measures of Canadian government constitute a side theme in her different novels. She is very much connected to the natural energies, commercial enterprises, settlement possibilities, and agrarian development. These are the commercial or economic developments promoted in Canada, and all these elements find a place, secondary place in her novels. Next important theme is quest for understanding, and it is a very abstract theme of Margaret Lawrence. Quest for understanding. Margaret Lawrence here becomes not only a humanitarian but also a woman having a heart for the love of the whole of the mankind. She gives emphasis on our attempt to know, understand, and realize the best in men. In her novels, especially in The Stone Angel, she leaves this message that it should be our consistent and insistent effort to know what is the best in a man, because the things which are best in a man can guide other men to consolidate their own existence, their own survival. Next important theme in her novel is sense of freedom, faith in faith, and in searching the meaning of life. As a lover of freedom, Margaret gives emphasis on both inward freedom and outward freedom. Freedom physically and freedom spiritually and mentally. If we are spiritually or mentally not free, then we cannot enjoy the physical freedom or political freedom accorded to us. Faith is a very positive quality in man, and faith renders positivism in the nature of man. So everybody should have faith. One should not be limited to the dark aspect of life, because at the end of darkness there is the hope of light, there is light. So one should live for the future aspect or future hope of life. Then another theme is her stress on meaning of life. What is the meaning of life? Why is a man born on this earth? She asks these fundamental questions through her characters in the novel. Another updated theme in her novel is the theme of exile and communication. Theme of exile, that modern man is on exile both inwardly and outwardly. The outward exile is doomed to man because of the immigrant tendency of modern man. Mobility has become a process of today's economy. In search of bread and butter, man leaves his or her own homeland, goes to a foreign nation and lives there, and this is called outside or outward exile. And inward exile, every human being is born alienated. Everybody is alone in this earth. And amidst this alienation, it is the sole responsibility of men to find out compromise, to find out social gathering. Another theme in her novel is communication. Communication, the power of communication gifted to men by God, has both plus points and minus points. If we fail to communicate, we are mistaken, we are misunderstood. If we succeed in communicating ourselves to others, we become lovable person, everybody will love us. So communication is a vital part of human life, and in her novels, she has given stress on the power of communication. So these are the themes. Now come to the second unit of the novel, that is the theme of self-alienation. The title of the second unit is the theme of self-alienation. But before we go into the aspects of alienation, let me tell you the summary of this novel. That this novel has its background of priory. Remember the word priory, Praire. Priory is a vast valley full of grass but without any trees. The land is greenland, full of greenness, but there are no trees. So priory is a common background of her novels, and this novel Stone Angel has a priory for its background. So Manawaka, Manawaka, Manawaka is a small town in Canada. It is an imaginary town. And in Manawaka, there was a farming based family. And in that family, there was a little girl whose name was Hagar Sipri, Hagar. When Hagar was a small girl, she lost her mother. And after the death of her mother, when she was buried in the burial ground of Manawaka, at that burial ground, the father of Hagar, Hagar, placed the statue of an angel, and it was the statue of a stone angel. So, when Hagar was still a little girl, her younger brother died, and when the younger brother was dying, Hagar was asked by her elder brother to cover the dying baby with the shawl of her mother. But Hagar refused to cover the dying body of her younger brother with the shawl, shawl, shawl of her mother, and as a result of this, the baby died. So Hagar was charged with the murder of her brother, but she did not bother. She did not mind. Then Hagar grew up. She was influenced by the characteristic behavior of her father. Her father, who was a farmer, though he was a fixed farmer, an established farmer having some visible land property. Still then, her father was a hard-working man, an arrogant man, a very angry man, and a man who was very proud by nature. And these are the characteristic behaviors of the father which Hagar inherited in her life. So accordingly, Hagar grew up to be an arrogant lady, a hardworking, an angry lady, and a complaining lady. She grew up to be a fine girl. When she came to her age, one day she had gone to a ball, a dance program, where she met Brampton Shipley. Brampton Shipley was then a partner of Hagar. Both of them fell in love and they decided to marry. But Hagar's fathers rejected this marriage proposal. He told to his daughter, if you proceed with this marriage proposal, you will be separated from my family. And Hagar invited the separation. She became the wife of Brampton Shipley. And after this marriage, she disconnected all her relations with her father, went to her husband's house. There she stayed with her husband for long 24 years. And meanwhile, she became the mother of two children, John, the younger son, and Marvin, the elder son. This lady Hagar developed a natural love towards John, whereas she became hateful towards Marvin. And the reason was clear. John resembled her husband, and Marvin resembled her father. That this girl Hagar loved neither her father nor her mother. So this is why as John resembled her husband, she loved John, whereas she detested Marvin, who resembled her father. Anyway, after a peaceful and struggling marriage life of 24 years, there was a separation between Hagar and Brampton. The wife and husband got separated. The two children were divided. John went with Hagar, whereas Marvin stayed with his father. After the separation, Hagar worked as a housekeeper in the house of a rich man with a very meager amount of salary. Anyway, she managed with that small amount of income. She gave her best to grow John as a fine young man, but with the march of time, discord takes place between Hagar and John. So finally, John went back to her father, and Hagar became a complete alienated soul. Nobody was with her to look after her. Anyway, after the death of her husband, she came back to her house where she had two sons, John and Marvin. But after few days of her coming, John died in a battle. Now Marvin is left alone with his wife Doris. Marvin and Doris looked after Hagar to the best of their ability, but Hagar was not satisfied with their love and affection. It was at the age of 64 that she went on complaining about so many petty things in the household. She would complain of very small things which Doris could not bear up. Anyway, the lady pulled up, and at the age of 90, one day Hagar all of a sudden left her house and went into the forest, and in the forest there was a beautiful sight, and its name was Shadow Point. She went to the Shadow Point and she started living there. There at the Shadow Point, she met a wanderer, a traveler, and to the traveler, Hagar opened of her rent of emotion. She opened her heart, she cried there, and she told all her past memories. Uh, Having searched and not found the mother at home, Marvin and Doris complained about her missing at the police station. One day, police and Marvin arrived at Shadow Point. They saved the woman and took her to Marvin's house, and that time she had changed. She started loving Marvin and Doris very much. So, with a note of positive change, the novel ends. So, this is the summary. Now, let us make a character sketch of Hagar Shipley. As first point of character sketch will be the background of the character. What was the background of Hagar Shipley? As I have told you, Hagar Shipley was the daughter of an established farmer, but her father was not a gentleman to her. He was an angry man. Though he was hardworking, he was stubborn, a self-willed man, and a man of complaining nature. And Hagar simply borrowed all these qualities of her father, and from her very beginning, she became an arrogant, stubborn, angry, hardworking woman. This is the background of this character. Now, come to the concept of prairie, Praie. Prairie, as hinted earlier, prairie is a vast valley full of grass, full of greenness, but without tall trees. So, in a prairie, there are no trees, and trees are there in a place to overshadow the area, to bring coolness to the area. But in a prairie, as there were no trees, so even though it is a greenland, it cannot protect the people because it doesn't have trees. It cannot provide shadow to the people. And the life of Hagar simply is full of prairie, that her life is full of greenness, but she cannot provide shade to other persons because she did not have that sympathetic outlook towards life. She did not have genuine compassion from the problems of others. This lady was a hard working lady. Not only her father but also her husband, both were farmers. Her husband had little landed property, and in that property, that gentleman was earning a variety of crops. And after the marriage, Hagar joined her husband in the field. She did hard labor. She earned with her husband, and she provided an extended helping hand toward the flourishment of the family life. And this she did for long 24 years. Though she was a lady of complaining nature. Though every day she would bring different type of complaints before her husband, still then she did not left her husband. She went on helping him. So in this way, she was a hardworking lady. But the worst things about this character are that she was a proud lady. She was proud of her father's economic lineage. She would tell to her husband that my father was such and such, my father has this and that. So she brought a sense of rift between the husband and father. She was a bitter woman, bitter, a cruel hearted woman. And after her separation, she succumbed to sickness, which did not leave her till her rescue at the saddle point. So sickness became a part of her physique from the very beginning to the end. This lady wore dagger and sword on her tongue. I hope you are able to understand the phrase wearing dagger and sword on tongue. That her tongue was very sharp and pointed. Whomever she was talking, whomever she was scolding, the person being scolded would run away from her. Her words were so vulgar and so sharpening. Another characteristic of this woman was that she was a lover of freedom. She wanted freedom from her husband, she wanted freedom for her father, her two brothers, her two sons, and even from her husband. And this freedom she did not get anywhere in her life. And so she was a repentful character. After her coming back to her husband's house at the age of 64, Hagar went under the care of her son and her daughter-in-law Doris. Marvin and Doris tried their best to give maximum comfort to this woman, but in spite of their effort, this lady was not satisfied. She would always complain against Doris to Marvin, and she would complain against Marvin to Doris. And in this way, she behaved very cruelly towards her relatives. Uh, Margaret Lawrence has portrayed this character as a tragic character. Understand the word tragic. Hagar Shipley was a tragic character. Tragic character is that character who suffers happily because of the indifference of destiny and happily because of his or her own mistakes, own errors. This lady was destined to be proud, to be hardworking, to be stubborn by nature. It was her destiny. She has inherited all these evil qualities from her father. This is her destiny. But she has her own errors, that she was angry, which she could have controlled. She was a lady of complaining nature, which she could have amended, but she did not amend in her life. She did not amend all these evil qualities which she could have amended. And these are the errors. So because of the indifference of fate and the problems of her own nature, she suffered. And such a character is called tragic character. And Hagar Shipley is a tragic character as portrayed by Lawrence. And every tragic character has a sort of realization, a sort of coming back. And Hagar also comes back. She comes back to her new existence. That in the forest where she had spent so many years alone, she came to her consciousness, she came to uh, a sort of awareness. She realized that at the end, at the fag end of her career, fag end of her life, she realized that the sort of behavior she is showing to the people is not right. And this realization helped Hagar to be intimated with her son Marvin at the end. So these are the points of characterization. Now let us discuss this novel Stone Angel as a novel of Volendux Roman. Remember the word Volendux Roman, Vollends Roman. Volendux Roman. Volendux Roman is a subgenre of uh, English novel that, with the change of socio-political and cultural ambience of the present day society, the writers have tried to sketch different types of characters in their books. And one such type is the characterization of old characters, elderly characters in the novels. So the novels which characterize elderly characters as the protagonists is called the novel of Volendux Roman. And according to this yardstick, The Stone Angel is a novel of Volendux Roman. Volendux Roman means a novel of completion or winding off. The first trait of a Volendux romance is that we shall find a great resemblance between the writer and the elderly protagonist. The elderly protagonist will share some of the autobiographical traits of the writer. This is the first characteristic of Volendux Roman. And this novel is a novel of that sort because the main character, Shipley, Hagar Shipley, shares some of the autobiographical features of Margaret Lawrence. Second important characteristic of Volden's Voldenga's roman is that the novelist tries her best to sketch the elderly character before he or she dies. And in this sense, Stone Angel is a novel with two unique characteristics. One unique aspect of this novel is that this novel has been narrated by an I narrator, a first person narrator. The narrator of the story is I, and that I is Hagar Shipley. Hagar Shipley narrates her own story to the readers. And what is the age of this narrator? Her age is 90. The novel begins with the 90 years age of the main character, Hagar Shipley. That the novel begins at the end. And a 90 years old lady starts narrating her whole life history to the reader. And in the way of narration, Hagar Shipley starts from her very childhood. She grows up, she marries, she remains with her husband, gets separated from her husband, remains alone, again comes back to her house at the age of 64, then at the age of 90, she leaves her house, goes into the forest, and gets a transformation. The whole episodes of her life are narrated by her. And within this span of narration, Margaret Lawrence tries to sketch these characters precisely and compactly without leaving any part of this character out before this lady dies. It is not clear whether Hagar Siple dies at the end or not. The novel does not make any clearance about it. Third important feature of Volenduk's roman is that the elderly character is tormented with the memory of those people who are shown dead in the story. In this novel, there are many deaths. For example, when Hagar Siple was a baby, her mother died. When she grows up, she marries. After her marriage, her father dies. And at the age of 64, her husband dies. Her son John dies. Her two brothers die. So there are a number of deaths. And this character remembers nostalgically all the lost characters whose message she does not get completely. And this inability to grasp the live message from these dead characters makes her a tormented character. Hagar wants throughout her life to communicate to her husband that she loves him very much, but she cannot communicate this love to her husband. She wants to communicate to her dead son John that she loves him very much, but she cannot communicate. And this inability to communication makes her a repentant character or tormented character. Third important characteristic of Volenduk's roman is that in each novel of this subgenre, the main character is an old man or old woman. And accordingly, in Stone Angel, the protagonist is an old woman. Another important characteristic is the redemption of the main character, the rise of the main character from his or her given stage to a more aspired stage of life. There is metamorphosis and internal change in the character of the main protagonist. And Hagar Siple undergoes a metamorphosis and inside change at the age of 90. Another technique of this novel is the presentation of discourse means speeches or dialogues or talks. The presentation of talks is an abridgment between speech and silence. That this type of character suffers from loneliness, silence in life, and their silence is properly communicated by the speech units or the discourse employed by the narrator in her novel. Now, come to the third unit of the novel. There is a novel of awakening. Hagar Siple awakens. She rises up from her given repentant stage to a joyful condition of life. That a novel of awakening. In this unit, we shall go into the psychological details of this character. That psychologists say that women, WOMEN, women often suffer from nothingness. Nothingness is a psychological disorder especially found with women. That this character, Hagar simply suffers from nothingness with relationship with men in the society. That all the males as described in the novel do not have satisfactory social links with Hagar simply. Her relation with her father, with her two brothers, with her husband, and with her two sons. These relations were not up to mark according to this woman. From their relation, Hagar simply gets nothing but a great voidness, voidness, voidness. Second important nothingness about Hagar simply is that she suffers from nothingness with values, social values. She does not reject the social values which are imposed upon her to be of any great use. Social values, first social value which she detests is the patriarchal framework of the society. Her father, a farmer, an established farmer, was a patriarch by nature, a man who dominates the female members in the society, in the family. But from her very childhood, she was observing that her father was dominating her mother, and when Hagar grows up, she is dominated by her father. When she brings the proposal of her marriage with her husband, she is downright rejected. And she does not like this patriarchal temperament of her father. Another great social value is the social setup which makes women inferior to the male in the society. She does not like. And in the core of her heart, this lady was a great lover of freedom, a lady whose motto was to go on independently. And this independent stature of this woman is severely affected by the social systems of the time. So all those social values give Hagar simply nothing else but nothingness. But the most personal lackluster of this character was her inability to bend to compromise. She was an uncompromising lady who was not ready to compromise with anybody, with any situation at any moment. She was so stubborn and arrogant. And this uncompromising temperament not only spoils her relation with her family side, but also with her husband's side. She becomes a lone character in the world because of her unbending temperament, uncompromising nature. Even her own children go away from her. John goes back to her father and later on he dies. She does not like Marvin the second or the elder son. So she becomes a lone character because of this nature. But she had a great love towards her husband. Even though she had been separated, often she would say to her son that my husband was the only person close to me who ever thought of me by my name. That my husband was calling me always by the name Hagar. Before him, I did not have any other identity. I did not have the identity of a wife. My husband did not behave me as if I were a woman. Rather, my husband always called me by my name Hagar. And in this way, my husband was trying to give me a special identity in the society. And because of this, Hagar was in deep love with her husband. As I have told you earlier, she loves John, the younger son, because John resembles her father, sorry, her husband, and she does not like Marvin, the elder son, because Marvin resembles her father. As she did not like her father, so she did not like her elder son Marvin. This lady is a repenting lady. She is left to repent. She is left to cry, looking back at her past. Her past was a gloomy past, an unsuccessful past. And when she becomes nostalgic towards this ruined past, she cries. She tries to remember the sweet days of her past life. And all this sense, the sense of nothingness, the sense of repentance, the sense of looking back at the past, all these things uh, gain ground in her psyche. So, as a pressure of all these factors, she suddenly rises to transformation, she suddenly rises to awakening. She goes to shadow point, and going to shadow point symbolizes her sense of separation, sorry, her sense of independence, her sense of self-willed mentality from the existing social setup. And in this forest, in this shadow line, shadow point, she become a metamorphosed character, she become a changed character, she becomes aware of women's sexuality there, that what should be the woman's sexuality in its real sense, that a woman should be compromising, a woman should be adjusting by nature, a woman should open her heart to love everybody. And these are the values which she realizes at the fag end of her life. And so, accordingly, reawakening takes place in her life, in her character. So, still then, friends, we are left with the last unit, unit 4, for which we do not have time. And I will give you again an opportunity to send me your queries if you have any, or otherwise, we shall wind it up. Any doubt, my friends? Should we leave the meeting?
Hello, sir.
Hello, ma'am.
Yeah, sir, I just want to ask you that which type of questions can come from this novel
Okay, one thing is that
from exam point
characterization of,
of view?
the prominent aspect will be the characterization of Hagar Shipley. It is a seeming question to me. Hagar, the characterization of Hagar Shipley. Another question will be justify that Stone Angel is a novel of awakening. Another question will be approach this novel from the angle of feminism. And it will be another important question for you, study of Stone Angel from feministic point of view. So these are three questions that seem clear to me. Okay, any more doubts?
Thank you, sir. Sir, I have to ask one more question. That we have to give only 5 questions among I of 10 questions in the examination when it will be asked in the question paper. So,
Yeah.
which novel we should focus more, or we have to read all the novels given in MEG-8 or poetry?
uh, your 10 questions will cover all the aspects like prose, poetry, and short story, right?
Yes, sir.
And out of 10, you will be asked to reply 5. So, my point is that if you give emphasis upon all the novels and one or two poems, then I hope you will get your 5 questions. So prepare on all the novels. Uh, we have almost 4 novels, I think, and 2 poems. The poems of mm, Caribbean literature. So emphasize on Caribbean literature poem and all the novels. Okay.
Yes, sir. Thank you, sir.
Okay. Should we leave?